Hello and happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. And this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm. I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Mr. Jeffrey Bozler of the rock band Crystal Winter.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, you spoke to my wife.
He just asked before we went on, did you speak to my wife? And she gave me the intel that in high school you were in a band called Crystal Winter.
Yeah, we
Cool-
were trying to figure
cool
out
name.
if that was high school or college.
Yeah.
She never lets me forget how ridiculous. You know, a lot of Y's in there, Crystal Winter.
Yeah. Oh, really? Is winter spelled with a Y?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't.
Embarrassing. See, there, people are laughing.
Yeah.
And we did one of those things sitting in the car that anybody who's trying to name a band does. Somebody comes up with a great idea and everybody says, well, they're going to change it to this. They're going to call you this. So we came up with Crystal Winter, not knowing that 50 years later, people are still laughing.
Well, thanks, Jill, for that little piece of intel. What kind of music did Crystal Winter play?
Crystal Winter. I'm trying to figure out the year. I remember we played Iggy and the Stooges.
All right, let's say
something called
74.
TVI.
Uh-huh.
So if it's 74, I'm in college.
Okay.
So now we've answered that.
Oh, sure. My speculation.
I had a younger era band where we did like Beatles and
Okay.
the Doors and the Stones,
And
typical stuff.
And what was that called? Rocky
We
Spring?
didn't have a name for that. Or if we did, I was never clued in.
Right.
We would just play. And we usually played where people knew us, so it was not an issue. It was like, oh, there's Jeff and Steve's band and Chuck.
Uh-huh. Jeff and Steve and Chuck. And this was the younger band would have been when you were in Long Island.
Yeah, that
In
would
high
be like
school?
1969.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I am older than you.
And what did you play?
Guitar.
Oh, nice.
Guitar. In fact, I was thinking about when I saw that you put me as the classical clarinetist. The Beatles kind of ruined that career. I didn't know it at the time, but I knew a kid in high school, Bob Martinez. I can't believe I remember his name, who played clarinet in a rock band, but they were like a Zappa centric band.
Uh-huh.
And but I was very jealous about that. I thought, who knew? I could have been doing rock and roll with a clarinet, but then I was not a Zappa person.
So at some point, did you switch from guitar to clarinet, or you were doing both?
It was both for a little while. Then I switched to guitar, which I still play. And I came back to the clarinet when I got to college. And
Did you ever play clarinet with Crystal Winter?
no.
But did you study clarinet in college?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
So that's the classically trained part of it.
Yes. And I probably somewhere along the line may have mentioned that my recital, I had to give a recital and I performed Mozart. And that's where my father was my accompanist, who was an accomplished pianist.
Oh, nice.
And he's the one who pointed out when we were rehearsing the piece that I could not play 32nd or 64th notes. I was winging it. And that's when I realized there was a flaw in my classical training.
Well, you're winging it because your tongue's not fast enough, or
I just, counting gets very complicated when you pass the eighth notes. Once you hit 16th, it becomes you have to be skilled. And I thought I was doing it, and then once he pointed it out, I would try to insert what I thought was a 32nd note, and I got caught all the time. So if I had stayed with clarinet, which I probably played into my 40s,
Nice.
I probably avoided anything that had those kind of notes.
Uh-huh.
I stopped playing when my father died.
Oh,
Well, at that point, I was just basically doing classical stuff with him.
right. Which must have been a blast. And where would you guys play out together? Him on piano? And you
No,
on
this
clarinet?
was a living room thing,
Right.
with the family standing around. And, my days of playing in bands and orchestra were when I was younger.
Yeah. Well, it must have been a blast to be making music with your dad.
It was one of the things that we were close over.
That's nice. And what did he do?
My father was a house painter.
Okay.
but he was a frustrated music. My mother was a frustrated artist. My father was a frustrated pianist, mostly because I ruined their gig by coming a little unexpectedly early in their marriage.
So you're the first of a number of children?
Four.
You came too early, so they had to shift directions.
Into making money.
Making money.
Yeah.
And they told you this? Was there ever any guilt?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I had the generation gap stuff going with my father. And so, who knows? Maybe there was some of that.
The generation gap. So what year did you graduate high school?
71.
71. Okay. The generation gap. I haven't heard that phrase in a long time. But, they used to, I'm old enough to remember people talking about that way back when, that one generation just couldn't understand the next.
Oh, it was awful. I liked the Beatles. My father was a bebop fan and a Mahler fan. So, the Beatles were sacrilege. They had no talent.
Uh-huh.
And the fact that I was arguing with the barber to leave my hair long was conflict. Growing sideburns was conflict, all that stuff. Bell bottoms.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can't remember ever getting, harangued by my parents. I think I didn't even think about it. Like they took me to get a haircut and that was it. It was the end of the story. But you wanted to grow your sideburns long and your hair long. And were you a Beatles fan? Did you want to look like the Beatles?
Oh, yeah. I was 11 when they were on Ed Sullivan. And this was God speaking to me, as it was to so many people around the world.
And your folks were watching it too, because everybody watched Ed Sullivan.
We were in the living room, and my father said, "You don't like this crap, do you?" And I turned, because I know where my bread is buttered, and I turned and I said, garbage. All the while I'm thinking, holy, what, can you curse on this? Holy shit.
And what was that like? I mean, had you never heard anything like that before?
I had flirted with rock and roll early, and my father would tolerate. I remember for my 10th birthday going out, I think we went to see Lawrence of Arabia, and then we went to the local pizza place where I would work as a freshman in college. And I think I played I Get Around by the Beach Boys.
Uh-huh.
And I just think my father just sort of, okay, well, whatever, probably thought I'm losing him.
Right. From Mahler and bebop. And who did he like in the jazz world?
Oh, all the standard, they always talked to my mother on their dates. They went to see Billie Holiday. And, I heard this story about that they're in the audience, Billie Holiday singing, and at her feet, cross-legged, is Jerry Mulligan, just like worshiping. So that's the stuff I grew up on.
Right. And so was your dad a pianist, fan of like Oscar Peterson or Dave Brubeck?
Oh, they loved Oscar Peterson. Holy jeez, yeah. And of course, everybody my age grew up with Take Five being played.
Right. Yeah, that was for my life, that album, which I found on my folks' console, just woke up my ears. I'd never heard anything like that. And I was just playing through the records. I put on Take Five, which is the first track of the album, Time Out.
Paul Desmond.
Just blew my mind. Yeah. So when you started making rock and roll, by that point, were they beaten down? Was it okay with them?
I guess, my mother had an old acoustic guitar. First, I built a fake guitar, so I could stand there and lip sync to the Beatles. And then
out of cardboard?
Yeah. And then I got my my mother's Woolworth guitar, acoustic guitar, strings 4 inches off the fretboard.
Right.
And I started...
A little strength in the fingers.
I started learning guitar, and I remember I went to my I had a number of clarinet teachers. When you're being groomed, you have the school and you have your private lessons. And I went to him and I said, do you have Beatles music? And it was too early for, nobody was putting out, Beatles for clarinet.
No sheet music.
Right. So on the sly, I was learning Beatles songs on the guitar. You get the books with the little chord diagrams.
On the sly. And I love that. Other kids with Playboys hid under your bed. You've got pop music, sheet music.
Yeah. And then my father kind of gave in, and I got some basic guitar lessons, which my youngest brother still resents that he never got guitar lessons.
And where are your other siblings?
My sister lives out on Long Island in the same general area where we grew up,
Which was called
Idle
what?
Hour.
Idle Hour.
Idle Hour, which is
Okay.
a community within Oakdale.
Okay.
And I have a brother who's in Florida, and the brother who also plays guitar lives on Long Island too, in Nassau County.
Great. And did they ever play with your dad and you?
One brother plays guitar. The middle brother played drums very briefly.
Uh-huh.
So we would try to do a little thing. I would choreograph or orchestrate
Right.
singing in the Volkswagen bus as we were driving around, and my parents got a kick out of that.
That's I would think so.
Somewhere along the line, I think my father was just happy that I was playing music.
Right. And your mom too, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as much. My mother and I had a huge fight. It's called the Begin fight.
Uh-huh.
I stopped over their house. By this point, I was in my 30s. And I think we were playing the stereo, and the police came on, da-do-do-do, da-da-da-da, to which my mother said, "Oh, my God, listen to they can't write lyrics, the whole bit." She said, "I want to play you music." And she puts on Robert Merrill singing Begin. Robert Merrill was an opera singer.
Oh, geez.
And I laughed.
Oh, boy.
And my mother ran away crying about how she was, none of her kids respects her.
And did they?
I'm glad my mother's not listening to this.
Yeah, she's passed on by now.
No. She's in just recently in a nursing home out on Long Island.
Well, she might be listening. She could tune in later, I suppose.
I won't tell her.
Oh, you won't?
No.
And well, how's the relationship with mom now?
Well, she's got issues, so that's why she's in a nursing home.
Okay.
So,
well, I'm sorry to hear that. I guess. I mean, if they're sort of like old person issues.
Yeah, old person. That's a good way to put it. Old person issues.
Yeah. Well, they're sneaking up on all of us. So the image of you holding a cardboard guitar, and
It was actually a slab of wood.
Okay.
With like a broomstick handle nailed to it with string, and like a string strap.
Like what do they call them? A wash tub base.
Oh, that would have been much more extravagant.
Okay. So you've got this makeshift instrument, and you're sort of singing "Love, Love Me Do" or whatever.
P.S. I love you.
Right.
It was early.
Yeah. And how did you get from there to the clarinet?
It was the clarinet came first.
Okay.
That was, I think they still do it. 4th grade, you get the option to play an instrument.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to play trumpet.
Okay.
And my father didn't want me to play trumpet because that was going to be loud.
How close were the neighbors at that point?
No, it would have been loud in the house.
Uh-huh.
And so he said, "How about the clarinet?" And I thought that I said, of course. I thought I'd pulled one over on him because as a fourth grader, I thought clarinet, cornet, I'm thinking, I think I'm just getting a smaller trumpet. Instead, I get this thing that's, like 2 feet long or however long it was.
And it's weird and it's complicated and it's got a whole bunch of keys.
Yeah.
And a
different
reed.
registers. A reed. Oh my God. Yeah.
Forget
Which
about it.
at that age, you're breaking them splitting them all the time.
Yeah. So you filled out the forms for clarinet, you took it to school, and then one day you get this case and it's like, what the hell is this? Doesn't look like a small trumpet.
Yeah. And the student model was a single piece. It wasn't,
Okay.
It wasn't the one where you have like 4 or 5 pieces. And it was silver. It was made of metal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've ever seen one of those.
I haven't seen one since. I think every now and then in some junk store, I see one.
Oh, you got to buy one. That sounds like a kind of fun thing to have.
That's a rent. The school gives that out.
No, but I mean, if you see one in a junk
Oh
store.
yeah, yeah. Well, I have my first real clarinet. You know, after a year, if you stick with the instrument, you have to get your own.
Uh-huh.
So I remember we went to Keyboard Corner, and I got my first, black and plastic or rubber clarinet.
And you never thought to ask if you could switch?
By that point, I was in.
And so this is fourth grade.
That's fourth grade.
And
yeah.
then in fifth grade, you stuck with it. You got your own real.
I got my own real clarinet.
And it's wooden?
No. That came later. I had to be an adult to afford a wooden clarinet.
And so you got a metal one.
That was the first year. Then I got the one made of rubber or plastic. I don't even remember. I still have it. It's sitting as a decoration in my house.
Right. And then eventually you got a wooden one.
Yeah. I got a Selmer.
Oh, nice. So fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth, at what point did somebody say, wait a minute, kid, you've really got it?
For clarinet?
Yeah.
I think it was early when I was in elementary school. And I remember being treated a little more special for all the woodwind.
So almost right away you had an aptitude.
Yeah, that disappeared as I got older, and I realized I was going to be a mediocrity at best. But back then, I think of practice. You read about the people who practice, 3, 4, 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
I
not
wanted
for
to be
you.
outside with my friends, so that was always a fight with my father, especially when I started taking private lessons on the side.
That you weren't practicing enough.
Right.
That's a pretty typical.
That's probably why I had trouble with 30-second notes.
With what?
With 30-second notes.
Right. And much less 64th notes. I can't even imagine playing a note that
I had to
fast.
remember if they even make 64th notes, and but they
Somebody
do.
does somewhere.
They
They're
do.
probably played by trumpeters, not clarinetists.
That's the violin going. Da, 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 da.
So let me just stick with this. A couple more questions. You're at one point you're in college. You're not playing those notes. You're not doing the things that you think you want to do with the clarinet, and you decided, okay, this is not going to be my future. Is that?
Oh, I knew it. In college, I knew it. Well, what it was, and this happened with the guitar later when I retired, rediscovering it. I got older and I started really liking the music that clarinetists played, and all of a sudden I'm buying records. Richard Stoltzman was my hero for a little while there. And I found other clarinetists and, started playing with them. I started taking lessons all over again. And then what happened was playing solo in my living room, or not even by this point I'm living in apartments.
Right.
And playing a clarinet in an apartment building
Doesn't make you popular.
Yeah, even when you're really wonderful, people complain.
Right. I remember living in the city, there was a trumpeter on my block who was really good and would practice with the windows open. It was so lovely.
I know, I love that.
But, he lived half a block down and across the street. It wasn't my, downstairs neighbor.
Right.
I didn't see how that would get in the way. So you're in college, you're studying the clarinet, and you realize, what else were you studying at that point?
I was a special education major.
Oh, in college.
Yeah. By my junior year, I got a job, through the office, working with a special ed teacher who was very pretty. So that helped.
Uh-huh.
And then I realized I really liked working with these kids. It was elementary school. And so I switched my major from English, which seems to have been a very popular subject back then.
Yeah.
To special education.
Nice.
And I got my master's in that also.
Huh. And what was it that you liked about working with the kids?
I don't know what specifically, it's interesting. My first 5 years as a teacher was with what we used to call back then, I apologize to everybody out there now, the profoundly and severely retarded.
Okay.
I don't even know what the new terms are.
Yeah.
But so it was just something I was good at.
Right.
And I seem to know how to work with the kids.
So kids who have a range of conditions, sort of like Down syndrome.
Some of them.
Uh-huh.
Some of them. as I progressed in my career, my specialty became emotionally disturbed or emotionally handicapped.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't even know the current terms.
Right.
I've been retired for 11 years.
Right. So did you ever work with sort of mainstream kids?
Yeah, I had a dual licensing, so I did student teaching with mainstream kids. Yeah,
Okay. Or whatever they're called.
whatever they're called. Yeah,
Yeah.
standard run of the mill.
Right. But you enjoyed working with the special needs kids more.
I did, but I all kids. That was the best part of my career was the kids.
Right. So you finished.
I also worked with adults too. I worked in sheltered workshops with adults. So I did that for a while too.
Sheltered workshops?
Yeah. I worked for AHRC, Association for the Help of Retarded Children.
Okay.
That was my first 5 years.
Right. So physically adult.
Physically adult, yes.
People who mentally top out in, like, I don't know, third grade, sixth grade, or
Lower.
second grade,
Much lower.
first grade.
Yeah, guys, it just, you're talking
Kindergarten.
IQs 30, 40.
Right. Okay.
And some of the ones I worked with were 5.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, that's where I started.
Right. It's interesting to imagine, how that would resonate with a young teacher, working with these special needs kids who are not like, I'm guessing, any of your siblings or any of your friends growing up.
Right. There was one kid in my neighborhood, but I didn't have a lot to do with him. They did a study, that a lot of people, especially in education, go to an area where they have some experience like that, a sibling or a family friend.
Right.
Not in my case, really.
Right. And one of the things that people say about kids like that is that they have a certain purity of their soul that older kids don't have. You're rolling your eyes. Not so much?
It used to be when I got tanned, you could see all the scars on my hands from holding kids back who were violent. But
those would be the emotionally disturbed.
These were the ones in that 5 IQ range.
Oh, okay.
They weren't docile all the time. Some of them were, yes, definitely.
But didn't have much impulse control?
None. We had one. He was funny. He had a thing for coffee.
Uh-huh.
And I remember a typical one of the ways I got
no
scars.
Coffee for you.
But one of the ways I got scars was there was a tour coming through, and on the tour, a few people had coffee, and the tour leader looked at the cups and went like this, looked over at me, and we called it a client because he might have been 21, 22, racing past me like the Frankenstein monster, with the hands up, the cliche, and going to attack that person,
diving
and
through
steal
the air
coffee
for the Dunkin' cup.
And I had to get him between them, and I don't know why his mother didn't cut his nails, and I've got his hands wrapped around my hands as I'm pushing him back, and his nails are digging into my hand. So purity, maybe
Not
there was
so much.
No. If I give it some thought, there is some purity there. Yes, definitely.
Well, but
it just comes out in a different way.
Right. But you stuck with that for most of your career. Is that correct?
Well, I eventually went to the public schools, and then my career did change.
Okay.
I had worked with, I remember walking in for my interview, and there was a junior high school job and an elementary school job, and they looked at me at 6'2", and young. I was still in my late 20s, and he said, "You're going middle school." And I remember thinking, I don't want to do middle school, but that's where I ended up. And
what did you want to do?
Elementary school.
Okay.
So that's where I wanted to go from adults to little kids.
Right.
But that was it. I did middle school for quite a while, and then I graduated to high school.
Okay. Teaching
for a little while, then I went to administration.
Okay. And you finished your career out as an administrator?
Yes.
A special ed administrator?
Yes. I was assistant principal for special education.
Okay. And when you were studying, did you ever think you'd get into administration instead of teaching?
No, it was purely an economic move.
Really? They're like, we could kick you upstairs and give you more money. You said, sure.
It was a raise to be an assistant principal, plus assistant principals for special education were required to work summers. So there was that extra money.
Okay.
So that was it.
And did you have kids of your own at that point?
Yes. My daughter, Kelsey.
Uh-huh. You came too early and then you had to give up your dream.
Of being a...
Yeah. All right, listen, this is a good place. I can't even believe we're halfway through this hour already. But as is the tradition, you brought a cocktail for us to enjoy.
I did.
This Friday evening. What did you bring?
I brought... my standard drink is always a martini.
Oh, that's a fine standard drink.
So I decided I was not going to cut corners.
Yeah.
So I don't know how other people do it, but
you brought some nice martini glasses.
Yes.
What do you call this kind of a glass?
I think this was called a Nick and Nora. Nick and Nora was smaller, but it's the basic shape.
Uh-huh.
I see. There you go. Oh
my
like
goodness.
That one. That's a really nice one. So we have that. Am I making 2 or am I making 3? 2.
2. All right. Good. More for us.
I brought a whole slew of things. Yes, I'm ducking the microphone.
Yeah.
Olives.
Perfect. These are good looking glasses.
Vermouth.
Can we get a picture of this for posterity?
And Monkey 47 gin. I thought we'd go fancy.
And why do you like that gin? Why is that special?
You know, I grew up in a beefeater household.
Uh-huh.
And
were your folks tipplers?
Yes, they were.
Uh-huh.
Johnny Walker Red and martinis. I remember the first time I had a martini, I thought it was kerosene. So I can tell you that martini, I think, is an acquired taste. And why we want to acquire it, I'm not sure, but I managed, and it's all I really
Perhaps
like.
Some of these gins are really, really lovely these days. Oh, look, you're spraying the vermouth then. I'm guessing that's for me. I like them a little bit more wet.
Yes.
I mean, I used to order it the way everybody did way back when, when it was a joke, like, oh, just sort of whisper vermouth at it. And people had a dozen clever ways of saying that.
Oh, wait a second. I got even fancier if I can find it, isn't it? Oh, there we go.
Then I read somewhere that the classic recipe was more like, 2 parts to 1 part gin to vermouth. And I was like, oh, I got to try that. And it was a whole different beast than this extra dry sort of thing. So Monkey 47, is it very
it's
sort of...
It's more botanical.
Okay.
It's got... Is that really where it came up with the...
47 different things. Huh. Oh, look at those little sticks holding the olives up. What a treat. And so when your folks were tippling, did they entertain? Did they have friends over for drinks and stuff?
Yes, we had a very large living room, and in the corner was a bar.
Nice.
And
love that.
So
shag carpet?
No, my parents were a little classier than that.
Mine weren't. We had shag
with the rake.
The rake, yeah.
Oh, that was the real.
Yeah. Well, this is just a beautiful drink you're pouring here, Jeff Bozler, rock band Crystal Winter.
Out of a thermos thing, though, for the cold.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that. So this is yours.
Okay, thank you.
See, it's not crystal clear like
it's not
a traditional dry gin.
So it's not the official drink of Crystal Winter, since it's not clear enough.
Oh, God, back then I was probably drinking Southern Comfort and Coke.
Do you think so?
I shook it. When I want it really cold, I shake it. God, my hands are shaking. I guess I'm nervous being on.
Yum! Thank you so much.
Air.
Nervous? Yeah. All 12 listeners are judging you harshly right now. So, oh yeah. Oh look, they're spilling it everywhere. The engineers. Well, so. You went to college, grad school. You got a grad school degree in special education as well?
Yeah, and then a degree in administration.
In administration. So at some point you were prepared to go into that side of things, I guess.
What, administration?
Or did you go back when they said you wanted to go?
I got into administration. I had I think I was only teaching for a few months, and I must have shown something. So I was out playing golf. I have a very brief window in my life where I golfed, and I was golfing with a dean of students, and we went to the 19th hole, and he said, "You do realize you're going to coordinate the unit."
The 19th hole being the bar.
The bar,
at the end
yes,
of the 18
yes.
holes of the golf course.
And I looked at him and I said, "I've only been working for the public school system for like 3-4 months." He said, "The principal wants you to be the coordinator." And that began it. So I was a coordinator, then I was a teacher director. We had a school within a school that I was the director for.
And which school was this?
Martha Valier on the Lower East Side.
Martha Valier.
Yeah.
Now, there was, we don't have to talk about it if you don't want, but there was a student was stabbed at
Yes,
that
one of my students.
school, one of your students.
Yes.
By another one of your students?
Yes.
And died. And I saw the story online.
Wow, you did.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, the Times reported on it.
Yeah. Oh my
That
God. We were in the Montel Williams. I mean, it was national news. I don't know. The one who died might have been 14.
Right.
So that was big stuff.
So that must have been huge stuff for you emotionally.
Oh, it was traumatic. Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I was in my office on the phone, and he, as I've told people, The Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
He walked into my office and started complaining that he'd been stabbed. To which I looked at him like, "Huh?" And he took a couple steps and fell over.
Oof.
And one of the teachers rolled him over and said, "Oh my God, I think he's been stabbed." So we both started giving, mouth to mouth. And I remember thinking that we were saving him because his chest was rising, and then I realized that it was rising because I was breathing into him.
Right.
And so he died, and it got even more complicated because I was the one who had to call his mother.
Oh.
And she ended up loving me because she kept talking to the principal. I wasn't a principal. The principal tried to save my son's life, the whole bit. But I hate that. Whoever it was who called me and told me, I will hate him I never told her it was,
And
it was me.
It was one and the same.
Yeah.
Jeff Bozler.
Yeah. So grand jury testimony, all that stuff. It was big stuff. We were only saved. I hate to say this. The first bombing of the World Trade Center was 3 days later.
Okay.
Or 4 days, whatever.
Which is what, 91? When was that?
I guess, yeah. And
92?
So we came off the front page. I mean, we were in Time magazine, Newsweek, and when the mother said all that stuff, she was on Montel Williams. I ended up going on CBS TV for a panel on violence in the schools.
Right. Huh. And did you think about just leaving that career path around then?
I don't think so.
Right.
I remember just feeling traumatized for quite a long time.
I'll bet.
I got so drunk that night.
Did you?
They brought us into the police station, the killer, and another kid who was involved. It was all about Mickey Mouse sunglasses. Was that in the article?
I'm not
This
sure.
was a kid who was a good-looking kid and lorded it over everybody that he dressed better. So he was bullied. So his father gave him like a foot-long knife to protect himself. And when he started getting bullied over his Mickey Mouse sunglasses, that shows you it was middle school. He pulled out the knife, and that's how we ended up with this situation.
Oof.
It's funny. The mother always called me the mother of the killer always called me the long hair, because I had longish hair.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up growing my hair back to like halfway down my back. And I always wondered if that was part of the trauma. Well, now I'm going to really be the long hair.
Right.
And everybody said, we'll know you're better when you cut your hair.
Oh, that's funny. You think you were just not cutting it? Somehow it was a reaction to
I
this
thought of
trauma?
that. To this day, I still wonder if that's, when I see a report on traumatic experiences and all that, I think,
Right.
well, how did it come out with me? Long
Right.
hair. I think that's a almost healthy way to do it.
Yeah, that seems healthy enough. Yeah, well, apologies. I'm kind of sorry I brought that up, but it came up as I was looking at you, and then that was the name of the school, and it just connected. And
I've told the story, but it's funny when you bring it up. It's suddenly like, oh wow,
I dropped it on you.
yeah.
How-
I guess it's still a big traumatic part of my life now
was
that I
gonna
think about
ask,
it. Yeah.
And how often do you actually think about it?
A few times a year.
Okay.
I even have my moments where I think, is there something I could have done that could have prevented this? Because I was the coordinator, I guess, at the time.
Right. And when you think about that, do you think of any sort of reasonable ideas on things that could have happened?
Yes.
Metal detectors or?
Well, that came later.
Right.
Metal. Over the course of my career, I have taken guns, switchblades. I've confiscated quite a few weapons because of the nature of the kids I worked with.
Right.
And I also was working in gang territory. My father once said to me, I was helping with some plumbing thing. There were two things he'd said. Once he said, plumbers make a lot of money. Why didn't you become a plumber?
Yeah.
To which I looked at him like, you son of a... You were the one who said when I was a little kid, you should be a teacher.
Right.
And then another time he said, why don't you come back out to Long Island and become a teacher out here? It's safer. And I had to look at him and say, I don't know if I'd be good with Long Island kids. I'm good with inner city kids.
Right. I won't ask about what Long Island kids are like. Well, apart from the kid with the long fingernails and the coffee fascination, scratching up your hands, were you hurt in the line of duty often or at all during the rest of your career?
I had small. I was also a dean of students at some points, and so as assistant principal, coordinator, and working with the population, I spent a lot of time breaking up fights and taking kids who were out of control.
And that's why they put you in junior high to begin with, right?
I was very good at the takedown, taking a
fella.
kid down.
You were?
Back then. Yeah. Now, of course, I'd probably be arrested, but
And
in fact, I was suspended. There was an incident in the cafeteria, and I walked the kid out of the cafeteria, and the next day, the principal came into my office and said, crying, and said, there's been a report about you, and you're being pulled. And I had to go to the famous rubber room, where I was crying,
wow,
literally.
because the report is that you were being what?
That I had abused this kid, that
Okay.
he had bruises, the whole bit, and she had contacted the New York Times and the police. Later, I learned they pulled me because they felt that was the best way to clear me, to show that everything was above board. But I remember sitting in the rubber room with all these teachers, some of whom have been there for years. And when they found out at that point that I was an assistant principal, they said, oh, you won't be here. They're not going to leave you with us. And it's true. Somebody came, pulled me, and they stuck me on a computer, and I spent 3 days on the computer.
Like doing data input or
Fortunately
some
for me, yeah, it was totally data input.
yeah.
Fortunately for me, when I took that kid out of the cafeteria, I did have to pin his arms to his side.
Uh-huh. The one who complained later.
Well, he didn't complain. The story actually gets much more interesting. By the way, the killing gets very interesting, too, because it ends up with other deaths. But I did this in a cafeteria filled with students, staff, and security. So it was like, even the police said, oh, my God, what's this all about? And so I was cleared, and then it was this kid's older sister who did this. Years later, I am the new assistant principal at Washington Irving High School, and I walk into a classroom, and there's the kid. Now he's 18, 19 years old. You know, back then he was 12 or 13.
Right.
He's now remember, I'm 6'2". He's at least 6'4", 6'5".
Right.
And I look at him, and he looks at me and goes, you know, we both do one of those, holy shit. And I immediately go and I notify everybody I can. I have to tell you that somebody who, you know, made an accusation against me. Anyway, he comes into my office, and he's lovely. He's a problematic kid, but he's incredibly intelligent. And he just looks at me and goes, that was my sister. She made that up to make a lot of money. And I thought, well, thank you for that now.
Wow.
10 years later
And
or
so,
whatever.
So at that age, was he in your school for like a year or something?
He was a senior,
Okay.
so I only had him for that year.
So you overlapped for a year.
Yeah.
And you didn't have any trouble.
No, he was, you know, the deans had trouble with him, but I never had trouble with him.
Right. And did people threaten you a lot? Students or parents of students?
Oh God, yeah. Parents, you know, too many to even tell you. Threats were part of the job.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to like sort of swerve into this other topic here. At what point in all of this in your life did you start practicing Buddhism?
I started flirting with Buddhism when I first got out of college, my first job.
Okay.
Somebody I worked with, a physical therapist, I forget what her job was a Nichiren Buddhist. That's the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Oh, really?
Tina Turner was a Nichiren Buddhist.
Now, those people used to be on the street corners in New York City
Were
when I
they?
first moved there. Yeah. Chanting for world peace, they said.
Oh, okay. So I did that for a little while. And then when I moved into the city, I started going to the Zen Center on 62nd, 63rd Street. I went there for a while. And then I left it. And I would try meditating on my own. It's when I retired that I got more serious. I had a bucket list of all the things I was going to do upon retirement. And get really serious about Buddhism was one of them.
And has that happened?
Yeah. So when I was still living in Brooklyn, I became a member of the Shantideva Center in Park Slope. And then when I moved up here, I became a member very briefly of the Tibetan Center on 9G.
Okay.
And then I discovered through a friend Wan Buddhism.
Okay.
Their center, in fact, their American headquarters is in Claverack.
Okay. What is Wan Buddhism? What is the difference between that?
Wan Buddhism is newer. It came about around 1900, roughly.
Okay.
And it's South Korean, in its origin, and it's really appealed to me, and I kind of feel I have found a home.
Nice.
So I go there twice a week.
Oh, lovely. And what happens when you're there? This is Claverack.
Right. Wednesday nights I go for the meditation.
Okay.
It's a group, large group. And Thursday night I go for a Dharma class.
Oh, nice. And what is the Dharma?
Dharma is the doctrine.
Okay.
So studying the doctrine.
Studying the doctrine of Wan Buddhism.
Yes.
And the meditation, is it silent or is there chanting or?
There is chanting.
Right.
In fact, it's broken up 10 minutes of chanting, 20 minutes of meditation. Then we do movement meditation.
Okay.
Where I get to take my old, very weary, very achy body and try to move it around.
Uh-huh.
And then some more meditation and a
Probably
little
healthy.
Dharma talk. What's that?
They're probably healthy.
Oh, yeah, anything.
Move the old shaky body around.
Got to move all these aging joints.
So what I wanted to ask, and sorry for jumping around, was you started the Buddhist practice like when you're going into college. Was any of that helpful for you in your career as a teacher? Sort of like not getting too...
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that coming here. I told you I get nervous about things like this. So in the car over, I started remembering how that helped me.
Right.
When I was running a summer program for like 3 summers, and that was really stressful. And I would meditate with fervor,
Right.
and it would help me get through the day.
And did you ever try to teach any of your students, mindfulness or meditation or?
No, I never did.
No.
I always kept that separate.
Well, looking back on your academic career and your increasing sort of Buddhist practice, do you see things you might have done with the students you would like to have done with them, or you just moved on?
I guess I've been,
mind's not there.
now that I'm even more serious about it, I'm well past being an educator.
Right.
So I don't really think about that.
And so, what are you now?
I happily retired. I just saw something yesterday. I was telling Jill about this. Somebody wrote Miss Manners, saying, I'm retired, and everybody asked me, what do I do with my time? And the person said, I'm tired of that. What's a good response? And she said, somebody she knew said, I spend the morning doing nothing so that I'm free for the afternoon. I don't do nothing.
I like that.
But I do like that response.
You don't. You do a lot of stuff. You do the Buddhism. You're a painter. You're a beautiful watercolorist.
I try. I do try.
And do you paint once a month or?
I try every day. And I do have my my study of since I've lived up here, almost every Sunday I go down to that dock area down right across the road here.
Okay, down here, the landing in Rhinecliff.
And I go there 6:30 in the morning, and I paint for about a half an hour.
You set up an easel or work?
I sit in the car. It's that way. I do it right through the winter, and I collect them all, and I can see progression from where I want it. I've never wanted to be a realist, but some OCD makes me try to be a realist. And I past half a year, I think I've gotten into surrealism. So maybe by the time I'm 80, I will be an abstract watercolorist.
Right. Or you'll be an impressionist.
Well, I have a notebook filled with all the paintings, but I do other things.
So how many paintings are there by now?
Oh,
hundreds and hundreds.
I've
hundreds.
got from
thousands. Yeah.
Well, I've been doing 3 years worth, I guess.
Okay, so there's 1,000.
So I have a lot. It's once a week down there.
Oh, okay.
And then I have a studio.
That's more reasonable.
We happened to buy a house that had a studio, so I got the studio.
I would love to see a short film of all of those paintings from that same vantage point. But you're not always looking at the same point across the river.
Well, I guess I have a view of about 180 degrees.
Yeah.
So, I do one section, then another section. Depending, I sit there for 5 seconds and try to figure out which angle I'm going to do. The bridge frequently figures. But I try not to only do landscapes, although it's fun doing that, especially up here.
Right. But the practice sounds very, as they say, sort of Zen, to be there doing this every day.
Oh, it is. In my studio is where I also have my area for meditation, and I frequently, I go back and forth. I'll paint for a little while, and then I can meditate, then I go back and paint. And
is the painting very meditative for you as well?
It is, yeah, because you're focused, and
right.
And always wrestling with just being free and clear. Other this, because I do have little OCD tendencies,
which seems
as Jill would tell you,
butt up against the idea of free and clear.
Right, trying to be free and clear.
Yeah,
that's when I'll be an abstractionist. But
when
I'm totally clear.
When you're totally clear, you'll be. And so, do you ever try abstract paintings? That
Scientology,
I'm not sure.
I think,
but
being
I hope
clear.
That's not your future, because that doesn't seem like a happy place. Now, I've been lucky enough to be in your studio. You have a guitar in there as well.
I have 2 electrics in there, and in the house I have 3 acoustics and a mandolin. That was part of the bucket list, was to go back and study seriously. So I did that for a few years and tried my hand at composing.
Uh-huh. And
Well,
and what kind of studying? Like, is it Segovia or
oh, no.
Django or Keith
No.
Richards or?
More Keith Richards, perhaps. Folk, rock, blues. You know, I got myself a dobro.
Oh,
so,
nice.
So that's fun.
Yeah. That's just wonderful. I wish I had.
My theory was I was going to come up here and I was like going to join other musicians and all that. That hasn't really played out.
Right.
Who knows? That could happen again.
Maybe some people in the Dharma class in Claverack are looking
Well, there
for
is one guy who walks around with a guitar, but
a little billboard.
yeah, I didn't think I'd
Let's
go up to him and say, "Oh, me too."
Yeah. Oh, you play guitar?
I don't want to push myself, you know.
How come?
I don't know. It's you know, at my age now, serving my ego is a constant. Not serving my ego is a constant struggle.
Okay.
I think I once told you that my view of all this is each day I wake up and try to be less of an asshole than I was the day before.
I try. I'm swimming against the tide. It's tough.
And I'm not always successful.
Right.
As everybody who knows me knows.
But, asking, getting together a band isn't necessarily feeding your ego, but, indulging your delight.
Well, that's why Jill bought me an electric, I used to have an electric guitar and a whole amp setup and I gave them all to my brother, who then lost them in Hurricane Sandy.
Oh, no.
Oh, I had this 1950 Gretsch amplifier that was phenomenal. So that's gone. So she got me the electric guitar, and then I went out and got a great amplifier and had my flirtation with I'm going to be a rock star at, I guess I was 65 then, 64. There's a reason you don't see 70-year-olds.
Oh, please. I brought up Keith Richards before.
Well, that's true, but he started younger than me.
Doesn't sound like it. You had a wooden guitar at age 6 or whatever.
Yeah, I think all those heroes, those British heroes, started in the 50s.
Right.
And they had an intensity that I did not have, unfortunately.
Okay. And in what part of your life, past, present, or potential projected future, do you feel the most intensity?
Buddhism.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know much about it, but it seems like sort of the absence of intensity and just sort of a more of a naturalness. And
well, the intensity is wanting to go there.
Okay.
To delve into it, to, lead my life that way. If you're talking intensity, like traditionally, passion, whatever, that might be painting.
Okay.
Hey, I took classes with Betsy Giacaruso.
She's a phenomenal watercolorist, but she does what she does.
Yeah.
And it's not really abstract or impressionist. It's fairly realistic and
fairly
loose.
But she's got some loose things that are really great. When I moved up here, I actually thought at some point I want to study with Stats.
Fasold.
Yeah.
Yeah, over there at the Woodstock School of Art.
Yeah.
He's
maybe I'll get around to that.
Phenomenal watercolorist.
Yeah, maybe I'll get around to that.
Yeah. Well, what else is on the bucket list?
Let's see. I've done guitar lessons, mandolin, composing, Buddhism.
You've mastered
watercolors.
You've mastered the martini.
Well, I think that was in my genes.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's left? Stay healthy.
Yeah. And what else? But did you actually have a bucket list? Did you make one?
I did actually.
Like, I want to see Machu Picchu or...
Oh, no, it wasn't things like that. It
right.
was more about, discovering artistic things. That it was along that line. I had a bucket list.
Where is it?
Oh, probably in some journal from years ago. When I was getting ready, when I was thinking about retiring, I had a friend who was retired. So I went to him for advice, and he gave me all the right advice. Marty Shapiro, who's never going to hear this.
Thank you,
but,
Marty.
Successful retirees are people who are self-directed. You know, I've always had interests, hobbies. You know, then you have the people who work is their interest and their hobby. So without it, they have to find things. And that's why, you know, I have a brother who I hope isn't listening now, and who retired, the one who's in Florida, retired and realized he needed to go back to work. So he's back at work, doing very well. So,
right. That's interesting. And now you're doing the work that you would like to never stop doing.
Yeah, I always wondered if, we're probably running out of time here. I always wondered if I hadn't been trained by my father at an early age that teaching was a noble cause. I would have loved to have gone into the arts, whether it was as a musician or a painter. My youngest brother was a painter, and we're trying to get him back to it.
Right. And why? Who's we? Why are you trying to get him back to it?
Because he was really good. And I think he succumbed to making a living.
Right.
And maintaining a lifestyle and all that stuff.
And is he retired as well?
No, he's not.
What does he do? Did you say?
He's always been in the art world in some manner. He worked at Marlboro, Pace Wildenstein, all those great places, you know.
Yeah, like top level.
Yeah, and he worked with all the great artists.
Yeah.
So
he's an art dealer.
Not a deal. You know, he managed their works.
Okay.
When
he gads. Wow.
Which is more complicated than we thought. We always thought, you put the painting in a rack. That's
right.
It's much more than that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, the humidity controller or whatever.
Oh, and most of the paintings get rolled up. And then when they're going to be in a show, they get unrolled, which means there's damage that has to be taken care of. And
gads.
That's things like that.
That sounds like a bad way to do it, to roll it up. So you live down near the river in Barrytown.
Yes.
Do you boat down there at all?
No. I was a kayaker for many years.
And in like Long Island Sound era?
Great South Bay, mostly.
Okay.
And, go from Long Island over to Fire Island. And
okay.
And I gave my kayak away to my brother. What happened was, to be a serious kayaker, which I thought I was, you really have to have mobility. And I've always had back issues and stuff. And eventually the physical issues made that kind of kayaking.
Well, borrow a kayak. Let's go out in the river.
That would be great.
From the place right there where you spend so many mornings painting in Rhinecliff.
There's a kayak launch there, right?
It's a beautiful kayak launch.
Yes.
I
think you might have been responsible for that.
I'm not sure, but we're out of time, so we can't discuss it. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. My guest has been Jeff Bozler. Wonderful, wonderful, nice guy who makes a mean martini. Have a happy Friday and a wonderful weekend, and stay tuned for the show that's next. Film Ranks.